Instead of focusing on defending their Olympic title, Canada's women's soccer team became embroiled in scandal at the Paris Games. Before the opening ceremonies even took place, accusations were levied that people involved with the women's team had been using a drone to spy on New Zealand's practice. This has sent ripples through Soccer Canada and the sport's international governing body. I'm Dave Breakenridge, and this is 10-3. Ryan Pyette, in France covering the games for Postmedia, joins me to discuss the repercussions Canada has already faced, what impact the scandal could have on Canada soccer, and whether FIFA cracks down any further. Don't forget you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. I'd love it if you could leave us a rating or review and tell your friends about the show. So Ryan, you're in France covering the Olympics for Postmedia. You've been covering, up until recently, Canada's women's soccer team, among other events. In advance of the Olympics, Canada coming in, the reigning gold medalist in women's soccer. I spoke with your colleague Dan Barnes a couple weeks ago in advance of the games, and we talked about some medal hopefuls. And he had said that our women's soccer team wasn't really looking to defend its medal strongly, but they weren't necessarily seen as favorites in the tournament. And so I don't know if a lot of people were really following them, hoping to see a repeat of their performance in Tokyo in 2021. However, all eyes turned back to the soccer pitch in advance of even Canada's first game against New Zealand with a surprising scandal, one that I don't think anyone expected to hear about, and one that caught a lot of people by surprise. Walk us through what happened in advance of the women's soccer tournament kicking off.
So just for some context, so Canada came into this tournament, no more Christine Sinclair, so the greatest player the program ever had, not there, right? So first big tournament, and then they were coming off the World Cup last year where they didn't make it out of the group. So, there wasn't expectations, but I think they put expectations like, hey, we can do something here and defend our gold medal. And I feel like, and then all of a sudden I got off the plane and I'm rushing to the field because it's like they were caught. New Zealand had contacted their Olympic committee to complain to the IOC and FIFA about, they caught the Canadians spying on them at the pitch, and so at the practice pitch, August Dury in Saint Etienne, where Canada played. They were practicing there before playing their first two games against New Zealand and France, and wow, what it went through the country, went through the whole Canadian contingent here. Obviously, the opening ceremonies hadn't been started. The torch wasn't lit. So this is all anybody was talking about. It was the first big scandal of the games, right there. They're in the Olympics. When you go cover an Olympics, you figure there's going to be, 10 or 12 crazy things that happen, right? At least. And this was the first one out of the gate, and, totally embarrassing for Canada. And, we were here, and, we're not affiliated with the soccer team. We're just covering it. But we had all kinds of media asking us, how do you feel about it? Like, what do you think about this? And, just what happened was, there's two staffers, Jasmine Mander and Joy Lombardi. Joy Lombardi, who, if enough people in Canada soccer circles know, he's one of the great coaches in Ontario, one of the best up and coming coaches in the country. And, he got arrested to go back. So we were talking to the coach and one of the players, and Mackenzie Berry, who actually scored that awesome goal against Canada to start off the tournament. We were asking her, like, what did you see there? And she said, well, we noticed something, and then, it might have been a bird, but then it stopped moving. So we were like, well, that's a drone, because I think in soccer, they use drones for their own practices. I think the players get used to them. I don't think the strange thing in all this that we can talk about a little later is that, it's common, and the players kind of are like, well, I know a drone when we see a drone, and obviously the coach was saying, yeah, they had to stop. So you only get an hour to practice, and it's been so hot in France, so a lot of the practice has been even shorter. So that the coaches want to use every single minute that they have available, and New Zealand had to right before these are a couple practices and training sessions and that sort of thing before the game against Canada, and they've had to kind of stop it. And then you got to complain to the cops, and then it's that 10-15 minutes drag on. You're not doing anything, and I think the players on New Zealand said that was the most annoying part was. We're out there sweating on the pitch and we can't do anything, right? Because they're into their the set pieces and the 11 on 11 formations that they're trying to do, as everybody knows. That's where Canada would kick us. As the media, there weren't too many media with the team, but they would kick us out of practice when they were going to work on those
Hmm.
and the penalty kicks in the corners and the 11 on 11 because they didn't want us to see it. And maybe, I don't know, do they think we're going to call the other teams? I don't, it's crazy, right? But
Yeah.
so they'd boot us out of the pitch. And so, then it gets to, I mean, look what happened. Canada Soccer said, first they were supporting Bev Priestman, and then they got a little more information. There's emails, and and then all of a sudden she's home, and the two staffers are home. So they started with 6 people on the staff, and so now all of a sudden there's 3 on the staff. The players don't know what's going on. They're all obviously you're playing the Olympics, you want to be excited. They're all of a sudden going, what's going on here? And so it's just a terrible, terrible situation. And then the news comes out, that this might have been going on for a while, back to the John Herdman days. And obviously, the one thing I learned here, Dave, was all these people are interconnected. It's all English coaches. They all knew each other when they were 20, 15 years old. They're Herdman and Priestman are from the same town in England, and all the coaches have some sort of association with each other, and it's just at this point it's hard to see, like, if this was a rogue operation or something like that. That was pretty much put to bed that it wasn't, right. That was the head coach trying to figure out a way to spy on other teams, kind of thing. And I think there's a lot of angst, right, going into the tournament. They didn't know, oh my God, if we tie or lose to New Zealand, we got that big game against France coming up. Maybe we don't make it out of the group again, and then maybe our program, like, where is it at, right? I think at the elite level, they worry every day that their standing isn't going to be what it was. Kind of, then their rankings might drop, and then the funding may drop. But I think they did a pretty good job here. When FIFA knocked those sanctions down, they got fined a lot of money, and then all of a sudden the Canadian government saying we're going to find a way through Sport Canada not to pay the coaches that got suspended. And what a crazy week it was.
Yeah. So ahead of the game against New Zealand, as you said, one of the New Zealand players said they thought they saw a bird and it stopped moving, and that's obviously a drone. And
Yeah.
so you get an investigation that kind of happens quickly, and we find out that Canada was in fact using drones, and so they send Bev Priestman home. They send these other 2 staffers home. What was the mood among the players at the time that all this is going on? As you say, they're kind of their coaching staff are down to 3, and you have this specter hanging over the team that they, as you mentioned, that FIFA sanctioned them with a 6-point penalty, so they really had to kind of overcome their opponents in the round robin portion of the tournament before they got to the knockout stage. What was the feeling amongst the players at the time as they're kind of having to fight against the notion that Canada's soccer program is cheating, because that was the specter hanging over them, and B, because of that it could have ended their Olympic tournament really early.
Yeah, I mean, it was. So at first it was kind of like, well, we don't have anything to do with this, and they were just kind of brushing it off, like when the allegations first came out. But then when FIFA came and knocked off 6 points, sent the coaches home, suspended them, and then they'd be suspended for a year. I think the players kind of, two things: they got upset. They talked about how much they cried when FIFA said 6 points. They thought, "Wow, this is almost impossible, right? Like, how are we gonna?" how are we going to do this? We're losing 6 points, and then and that was after one game. So you look at the standings, and you're weighted. You're minus. You had the 3 points from the New Zealand game. Now you're -3, and then it looks like a hill too big to climb, and then they find the program, and and once that happened, I think it went from like tears, and then like extreme anger, and then disillusionment, all those kind of things that like make it almost impossible to play a soccer game, right? Like
Hmm.
they were some of them were tough. Vanessa Gilles was a great voice in all this, and she said, I didn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Like how are you supposed to play soccer in that? They said she punched the wall. Some people like did the stone cold thing where they're like, whatever, like this is dumb, and kind of pulled themselves. But most of them cried. Most of them cried, and and were frustrated, and they felt like, and then all of a sudden it came out like, well, maybe they cheated in Tokyo, so maybe that medal is tainted. And I think that there was 12 or 13 players that were still around from that team, and then all of us, and they did. I want to say, Dave, a lot of them just kind of, once this started, they were told, I think, don't look at your phones, and don't see what's being written, and talked about you. And I think a lot of them did that, so they didn't see when we were talking to Jesse Fleming, and we were talking to Adriana Leon and Ashley Lawrence. They had no idea that Christine Sinclair and Steph LeBay had put out statements, and trying to say that they, like the Tokyo medal was deserved, and we did everything in our career on the up and up, and the players were surprised by that, and heartbroken that their former teammates and the vets to them had to do that. And I think it was then that it was like it reached the point where they're like, this is like way bigger than we thought, and we can't slough this off. And that was when they were kind of, I think the humiliation was starting to fit into to filter into the team, where they're like, this is just like terrible, and we don't understand the depth of this scandal, right?
Hmm. And I mean, you talk about the depth of the scandal. As you mentioned earlier, there were some emails that came out relating to this. What did the emails reveal about potentially how deep this drone scandal goes in Canada soccer?
Yeah, it was crazy that the emails were almost a smoking gun. I mean, I guess it tells you, if you're going to do something, you better just make phone calls or make sure that those aren't being taped, or whatever. I don't know, or maybe just talk to people in person if you're trying to do this stuff. But obviously, Bev Priestman got caught sending to an external. Someone she in the story, which I guess will be investigated further. She told a coach that they wanted the coach to spy on another team, and the coach, said for moral obligations, and as my job as an analyst, I don't really want to do that. And then so that's when Bev went to a kind of an external HR person, a human resource person, to kind of talk about like why she wanted this done, and she made the point that all the top 10 teams do it, and it's the difference between winning and losing. And that's also humiliating to the players, because it's like, and plus you're spying on New Zealand, who is way ranked 20 spots lower than you. The whole thing, the ridiculousness of it here was, why are they spying on New Zealand? Like, if you spy on France, who's number 2 in the world, or Germany, number 4 in the world, hey, I get you want a competitive edge, but you're spying on a team you should beat anyway. And that kind of told us like how important Bev Priestman, like, almost thought her job was on the line, probably after the Women's World Cup, and she wanted to keep coaching the team. So she thought she'd go to, and this is all alleged, and that sort of thing, but it kind of looks like, this is something that the program's done for a long time, and other things she kind of said in the email. And that hurts, because in Canada soccer, we were seeing it on the rise, right? We had some great moments with the men's team and all that. And I don't think in Canada, from what I learned from this, there's an appetite to just be the best. I think we want to be, I think we learned from this pretty quickly that, yes, we do want to be the best, and we do want to put resources to it, and we do want to develop great players, but we want to do it the right way kind of thing. And I think a lot of people turned on that attitude that she expressed in that email, and I think that was kind of a tipping point to the whole thing. And if Bev Priestman is ever around the Canada soccer program, I'd be surprised again. And she's the Olympic champion coach, so quite a fall here. And that those emails that came out and that FIFA used as kind of like when the appeal went in. Whenever you appeal something like the COC and Canada Soccer wrote up their appeal to the ad hoc committee, to try to get overturned FIFA. Well, FIFA was mad at what happened. IOC was mad, and they said they right away released after the decision of the appeal came out dismissing the Canadian appeal. They said, "Oh, and here's a couple nuggets on information on why that happened," and it was quite damning. And I think then everybody kind of turned against anybody that had been supporting Bev or supporting the program. They turned on the program.
We'll be right back. Now, maybe you can explain for me, and maybe there are other listeners who have been wondering about this, but when I think of sports in this day and age, I think of the immense amount of video documentation that already exists. You could watch Women's World Cup matches that New Zealand played. You could watch qualifying matches that they played. You could watch Olympic qualifiers that they played. I assume that there's existing video out there. So what competitive edge would the drone video get a team anyway? Are teams coming up with new set plays that other players have never seen before frequently? Is that the kind of competitive edge they're getting, or does it actually give them the edge that perhaps the coaching staff alleged to have been involved thought it would give them?
I think twofold. One, so if you know what the other team's going to do, it's easier to plan for it, so you can simplify the game plan for the players, and then you can spend your time doing other things like coaching up the players, having individual meetings, and all that. It actually, well, if you're drone spying and you're gaining that information instead of guessing, like, oh, what if they do this? Then we got to counter with this and all that. Then you free yourself up with more time to focus on individual things or other things that you got to do to get ready for the game. The other thing is, I think when you get to the tournament like the Olympics, so you could watch a video from 2 months ago, or like if you're scouting against Canada, you could look at their She Believes Cups or the Mexico games that they played before. So a couple of months before they picked the team, right? A month before they picked the team. So you could look at those and find some tendencies. But then at the tournament, I think they just kind of, when they have their practice, they just, okay, here's what we're going to do if we get a corner kick to the right. And then so Canada was saying, well, New Zealand, when they get we know from the drone pictures that when they get a corner kick to the right, this is how we got to defend it, because this is exactly what they're going to do. So it's kind of just knowing what they're going to do before they do it and all that. And I would sense like, I guess the comparable would be baseball, where you remember Houston Astros banging on the drum kind of thing. I think there's that kind of edge to it. So I heard the antidote to that was if a pitcher was expecting a curveball, then you threw a fastball in at him kind of thing. So, it would have been interesting to see what New Zealand did, because really we asked Michael Main, the coach, after, like, okay, so you knew they were spying on you, so, and he said, I really didn't change too much, but that's probably in the game. Like, they probably didn't get a corner from the right, maybe they got it from the left or something like that, or they didn't get a chance to use what they're going to use. But I do, I look at it and I think there is quite an advantage to be gained in terms of your time spent coaching, and I can see why coaches do it. I mean, it's basically, you wouldn't say lazy, because a lot of tech and work goes into that kind of spying and espionage, but it is kind of lazy for the sense that you're just trying to simplify things for your players and not say, hey, if they go over here, this is what you got to do, because they already know, like, this is what you're going to do. Because those two practices before you play a game, and you think of the Olympic cadence, you practice like twice and then you play a game, then you get a rest day, then you practice once, and then you have another game because you're playing every 2-3 days. So that practice right before the game, they're basically all they're doing is working on, okay, what are we going to do when New Zealand does this? What are we going to do when France does this? Colombia, that example, and they're ahead of the game if they know what's coming, kind of thing.
I suppose, although, like, I think, and I know it's not necessarily a direct comparison, but I think about hockey, and I'm from Edmonton. I watch the Edmonton Oilers play games, and if the Edmonton Oilers are on a power play, that Leon Draisaitl is going to set up in a specific spot, and every team knows that, and every team presumably will try and defend against it, but then they just score dozens of power play goals that way anyway, right? So maybe it's not comparable, but so I'm curious. One of the things that came out was, and you mentioned it earlier, kind of a question of, has the Canada program been doing this for a while? And even beyond that, is there the sense that FIFA may be looking into whether other countries are using drones, or is this kind of investigation going to live and die by what Canada is alleged to have done here, or a Copa America, or in past Olympics?
Yeah, what I think is going to happen is this is going to set. It seems like it's something that FIFA. I mean, it was at the Olympics, so it annoyed, and it happened like we said before. So it was embarrassing for FIFA and the IOC to answer questions about this before the games even started. So I think they're setting a standard here. Like, okay, drone users, if you're going to do this, this is the penalty, kind of thing. And I think the players kind of felt that at the end of the tournament. They're like, okay, now we better not see somebody cheating like this next time we're playing, or in the men's, like in the World Cup in 2 years or whatever. If this happens, that's the penalty should be 6 points away, right? Because we appealed it, we didn't get it reduced. That should be the penalty. So I think FIFA's kind of digging their heels in the sands and say, we don't want to do this anymore. It causes, I think the statement they said was, it causes a distrust in the game. And if you remember World Soccer, how many times have they done stuff to shoot themselves in the feet that brought distrust to the game, or the game's fixed, or what are we doing here? And I think they just looked at it from that perspective, like, oh, it's not throwing games or whatever. It's something totally the opposite of that. It's trying to gain an edge, kind of thing. But it's something that they don't want to do now. All the teams bring their drones to they bring their drone. People ask me, Dave, like, how do they get a drone into the France when you can't fly one in publicly in France, kind of without permission?
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of a no-fly zone, and that's what Joey Lombardi ended up getting arrested on. The the comment is they use drones to for their own practices. So the coaches say, okay, well, Ashley Lawrence or Quinn should have been over here in this position on that play, kind of thing, in practice, right? Oh, okay, we can teach that. Move them over towards the sideline or to the middle a little more, or something like that. And then, so they have their own drones there for their own practice. And then, obviously the temptation once you have one there is to use it for somebody else's practice. And I think maybe at some point FIFA is going to have to say, and they haven't yet, but they're going to have to say, like, okay, we're not using drones anymore, or something like that, right? Like, that's probably the way it'll eventually end up going if this happens more and more. And if Canada's doing, like, the one thing Kevin Blue said, the CEO, General Secretary of Canada Soccer, brand new to it, he said, in 4 months, I've learned there's all kinds of cheating going on. Like, it was very interesting to hear him say that, in that, trying to defend Canada and saying this was terrible. But he goes, what I've learned is, like, unbelievable kind of hijinks are happening all over the place that maybe never hit the light of day unless people are complaining about it, right? Like, obviously we would have not even heard of this if New Zealand didn't complain, and then the New Zealand Olympic Committee didn't, like, throw out a statement about it, right? We probably, it might have took a few days for it to leak out, kind of thing. But it looks like to me, with that penalty, FIFA wanted to get people's attention. I think it got the entire soccer world's attention because everybody started getting, every soccer player was asked about it, right? So it truly did go global.
Mm-hmm.
The scandal, which was bad for Canada soccer.
Yeah. And I'm looking at Canada soccer. Do you get a sense that this could spark a lot of house cleaning at the high levels of the Canadian program, or are there concerns that if you do that, you lose some really strong coaches who helped bring the program to where it is now.
Yeah, 100%. That's the foolishness of this whole thing is like Bev Priestman's a good coach. And I know enough people that told me Joey Lombardi is one of the great young coaches in Canada. So and maybe, internationally. So you're losing all kinds of and these, let's face it, like if these people coach for Canada again, it'll be be a surprise to me. So they we are going to be. I think Janine Becky said it best in the last after they lost to Germany in the shootout. She's like, "Well, we're hoping things get better, and we believe in Peter Grusso, the new president, and Kevin Blue, and they've done some great things here. The men's and women's team are on the same page, and I can't believe what they did in 3-4 months." But I think things get worse. She goes, just in my gut, and I haven't talked to anybody. But things like after this usually get worse than before they get better. So any momentum that was kind of going, now they're facing that uphill climb kind of thing. And I can't see. I think I have a feeling there's going to be a huge house cleaning over this in Canada soccer. I think the top two guys are going to have big decisions to make with the board of directors and all that. And I have a feeling, we'll see what happens, but I have a feeling that they'll want to distance themselves very quickly from anybody that might have had anything to do with this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we'll see how the dominoes fall in the coming weeks on Canada soccer end of things. Ryan, thanks for your time.
Anytime, Dave.
10-3 is produced by Sean Knox. Theme music by Bryce Hall. Thanks to my guest, Brian Pyette. More from him and all of our Olympic coverage at nationalpost.com. I'm Dave Breakenridge. Thanks for listening.